Hello and welcome back to another Monster Monday, a series where I draw a creature from D&D and I talk about its lore and its history and what it's like to fight as well. These videos are based on your suggestions, which you leave me down in the comment section below, so if you have a monster that you'd like to see me draw, that you'd like to hear me cover, then please make sure to leave your idea down in the comment section and I'll add it to my to draw list. And that list is something that I give to my patrons over on Patreon, who then vote on which ones of your suggestions they'd like to see in what order. So if you'd also like the control to pick which monsters I do next, and you'd like to support the channel, you'd like to tip me as little as the price of a cup of tea every month, then you can get in on this voting system, and all of your support really helps me to make these videos every single week for you. However, you're under no obligation to do that. Please don't feel like you have to. I'm just glad that you're here watching today's video anyway. Now today's video suggestion was first made by Paige Whitney, and Paige would really like to see the Neogi, or Neogi, however you pronounce it. I'm going to go with Neogi. With that out of the way, I think we should get started. So I have to say, these have got to be some of the weirdest creatures that you'll ever encounter in D&D, which is saying something, because we've already covered things like the gelatinous cube and the frog he-moth in these videos. But these things are next level weird looking. And I couldn't I couldn't pin down exactly when these creatures were introduced to the game, but I know that they featured prominently in the Spelljammer setting, the 2nd edition, which was released in 1989, so it's likely that they can date their origins to the release of that wonderful and bizarre science fantasy setting. Something which I hope to cover in a video all of its own at some point. Maybe not a Monster Monday, but Spelljammer is amazing fun. If you've never played it, look it up, ask your DM. If you are a DM, give Spelljammer a go, because it's a really weird take on science fiction or science fantasy. But hailing from that setting originally, these creatures are as bizarre as they come. The long and, well, definitely short of these creatures is that they're tiny, megalomaniacal slavers who, conventionally, in all of the illustrations that I've seen, resemble a cross between an eel and a wolf spider. I'm also starting to notice how many, the alarming number of you guys who suggest spider-based things for me to draw now that you know that I'm terribly phobic. I've got my eye on the lot of you. But anyway, as I am one to do, I'm going to have my own play around with this idea, as these things are inherently alien. So I'm going to try and make these things as alien and as weird as I conceivably can, using the eel and the spider as very vague concepts. That's because the Neogi come from a distant world on the fringes of the material plane, and are intelligent and resourceful enough to produce sleek, apparently spider-like, according to Volo's guide, crafts to transport them through space and from plane to plane. As such, adventurers are likely to encounter these horrible creatures on our plane of existence, in the astral plane, the Feywild, or even the Shadowfell. As should be expected, but is sometimes easy to forget with creatures that can communicate with players in their native language of Common, the Neogi have utterly alien morality, having developed on a totally different ecosystem on a totally different planet. So I didn't want to make these guys just a fusion of eels and wolf spiders. I wanted to make them look a bit like those things, but what would convergent evolution look like for something that is a mixture between those two if it grew up in a whole different world? The Neogi, as I've mentioned before, are slavers, but they don't see this as a power trip, unlike things like bullywugs, or even really morally abhorrent. Just like mind flayers, the Neogi are inherently psychically sensitive, and see mind control as a completely appropriate interaction, they might call it, with another creature, and cannot be made to understand why this might be unimaginably horrible for the other creature involved. They can't fathom the emotions and ethics of humans or other similar creatures, and even consider creatures that can't mind control other beings in some way handicapped. I suppose if it's a sense that every creature on your planet, everything intelligent that you know, can do, and most of the things you encounter in space, like mind flayers and things like that, are also psychically sensitive, then it's like someone missing, well, more than a sense, it's like someone missing both of their arms or both of their legs. Something that we as humans see as simply a different way of living, but a creature without any kind of morality, ethics, or empathy might judge a creature that is missing these things that most of us use on such a regular basis. Their minds are so different to anything else on the material plane that they don't even really experience things like love or hate or even loyalty. Despite this, these creatures are apparently lawful evil in alignment, which seems kind of weird to me, but I'll elaborate on that later on. Initially, I would have assumed that they were true neutral, or maybe neutral evil, something like that, as slavers. But mind control is so integral to their way of life that they live in what's called a hierarchy of ownership, where each Neogi literally belongs or is a possession of older, larger Neogi, straight from the time when they hatch until their what they call coming of age ceremony, which sees them gain mental mastery over an Umber Hulk, who these awful creatures use as essentially parasitic mind hosts, performing all of their physical tasks, because they're so strong and so much larger than the Neogi. The interplanetary spread of these creatures may be the reason that Umber Hulks are actually so prevalent throughout the material plane, and it's likely that the Umber Hulks may have evolved on the same original planet as the Neogi. Anyway, perhaps due to their alien physiologies, or perhaps due to their affinity for mind control, all forms of Neogi that we see in 5e, from the hatchlings to the standard Neogi and the Neogi Master, have an ability called mental fortitude, making them incredibly hard to charm, put to sleep, or frighten with magic. It may seem strange for such otherworldly creatures to have a connection with magic though, but Neogi Masters, the oldest and most powerful of the Neogi species, are quite potent spellcasters. Embracing their concept of ownership and dominance, these masters make a pact, just as a warlock would, with patrons of their strange stellar gods, some of whom you may have heard of before, as Akamar, Kaphon, Gibeth, and most notably, Hadar. And these pacts result in various warlock-like abilities, such as the ability to cast Eldritch Blast, Minor Illusion, Mage Hand, and of course the Arms and Hunger of Hadar, Invisibility, Whole Person, or even Dimension Door. Interestingly, although any adult Neogi can enslave a creature, they all have this main action called Enslave, which recharges after a short or long rest, which says that the Neogi targets one creature it can see within 30 feet of it. The target must succeed on a Wisdom saving throw, be magically charmed by the Neogi for 1 day, or until the Neogi dies or is more than 1 mile away from the target. The charmed target obeys the Neogi's commands and can't take reactions, and the Neogi and the target can communicate telepathically with each other at a distance of up to 1 mile. Essentially, you become a familiar to this thing. Whenever the charmed target takes damage, it can repeat the saving throw, ending the effect on itself on a success. So really, you can slap someone out of this enslavement if you try hard enough. But yeah, as I say, even as all adult Neogi can do that enslave ability, only the Neogi Master can speak telepathically, at least with creatures that aren't their thralls. And this kind of leads me to hope for a more biologically body horror style of mental domination. I know it says magic there, but I kind of like the idea of these masters being the only ones, because they've made this pact, that can perform magic. And seeing as we have so many creatures, everything that's kind of space-based in D&D has psychic affinity, it kind of bothers me. I'd like a bit more variety in there. So I kind of hope that their mental domination might happen via, let's say, an injected toxin or pheromones that they release to differentiate them from things like mind flayers and the Gith and, you know. Perhaps they all have tail barbs that cause these abilities, like something like a sting that they fire at people over a range or something like that. It seems kind of fitting that it might be something toxic or chemical, because their main attack, aside from their claw slash, is a bite attack which deals 1d6 plus 3 piercing damage and 4d6 poison damage, and causes the poisoned condition if players fail a constitution saving throw. So they are sort of inherently venomous creatures. I don't think it's too much of a stretch to hope that their mind control could be something organic rather than magical. Just, as I say, for a bit of variety. Now, I've mentioned that they have a parasitic relationship with Umber Hulks, but the reason for this is that these creatures are really, really small, something that I kind of touched on earlier. But they are tiny. The average Neogi stands at 3 feet tall, with the Masters growing to a maximum of 4 feet. Their hatchlings are usually no larger than a pet tarantula. And despite this small size, Neogi live roughly as long as humans, and mature roughly at about the same rate as well. But this whole kind of hierarchy of ownership thing makes their breeding practices really strange as well. The infants have a really odd relationship with their elders. When a master becomes too old and weak to discipline or own other creatures, a mob of aspiring Neogi jump this creature and fill it with a special toxin, transforming the elder into a bloated, helpless flesh sack, which they ironically called a great old one, or a great old master. No rest for the wicked. But it gets worse for these guys. The Neogi then lay their eggs on top of this elderly beast, and once they hatch, the young burrow down and devour the great old master. What a beautiful cycle of life. But despite being, I guess, cannibalistic and gross body horror spider eel monsters, I really wanted to make technology quite a focus of this. Again, magitech, science fiction stuff bleeding into your fantasy. You don't have to include it in your campaigns if that's not the kind of thing that you like, but I like to blend a little bit of futuristic technology into my worlds. And so the Neogi fit in really well for me. They have literal spaceships, and they have been to many planets and many planes. They're intelligent, they dye their hair, and they tattoo their skin, and they force their thralls to do the same, kind of like marking a sheep as belonging to a farmer. They also, if they choose to dye their hair in a certain way, or choose to tattoo themselves, they also do those same things to their slaves, any creature they own in their hierarchy, to mark that they are of their stock, they're part of their herd, essentially. So I wanted to make sure tattoos and this science fiction technology really plays a part in this drawing. Also, we don't know what they breathe. They might come from a planet that doesn't have too much oxygen, maybe. Although, to be honest, if the Umber Hulks are from that same planet, that might not really work out. Either way, they're intelligent, they have a society. It might be a weird, horrible society, but, adventurers can trade with them, for example, if they deem you worthy. Especially if you're evil, they might actually really consider that a beneficial thing. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed today's video. I had fun making something really weird and alien here, and as I say, making this kind of science fantasy, science fiction element mixed in with a bit of magitech stuff here. I like these creatures, they are truly odd, and I kind of like the fact that you can play a game where you can encounter creatures as bizarre as this and still speak to them, still communicate with them. You don't necessarily have to fight with these creatures, even though they are not very nice, and even though they endorse and have a culture built around slavery. And so you may be encouraged to fight them, you may be encouraged to stamp them out, because that is a horrible practice. However, I like the fact that you can play a game that doesn't always revolve around combat. I like to reward my players for coming up with non-combat solutions to things, negotiating and bargaining with people. So yeah, as I say, I enjoyed coming up with all of these elements and trying to find a drawing that makes this lore feel right. And they're really goofy looking, so I kind of want to have my own horror aesthetic to it, as you know I'm one to do. If you enjoyed this video as well, and you like this drawing, please make sure to leave a little thumbs up, a little like down below. That really helps YouTube know if I'm doing a good job or not. I hope you'll subscribe as well, because I make videos like this every single Monday, and I like the little community that we're building here, so I would hate for you to miss out. I would hate to miss you guys. I get a lot of comments in my comment section saying this channel needs more views or this channel needs more subscribers, and I need your help to do that. So if you want to support the channel and you want to help it grow, if you really think that it does deserve more people taking a look at this stuff, then please make sure to share this video as well with any communities that you're a part of, some of your friends, what have you. All of that really, really does help this channel tangibly, so thank you very much. And if you want to support the channel in a really personal way and help finance me making these videos, I'd urge you to head over to Patreon, because that's a really personal way to help. But also, it allows me to make a little community there and give you guys rewards for helping me out. As I say, the price of a cup of tea per month, or even less than actually, $1 a month, allows you access to the voting system, so you can start voting on which ones are the monsters you'd like to see next. But there are also various reward levels that allow you to get a copy of every single drawing that I do each month if you like the drawings that I do. There are also exclusive live streams where I talk about my adventures and world building and things like that. And there's a pledge level where we can just chat one-on-one. I can do some artwork for you, or we can talk through campaign ideas and character ideas. We can brainstorm and work stuff out together, which is a really fun one. So if you fancy that, please don't hesitate to head over to Patreon But if you're not into that, you can't afford that, or you simply don't want to, I'm glad you are here anyway. So thank you so much for watching, and happy monster hunting.